Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. And right now, before you reach in your pocket or toss a handful of change into that spare jar on your counter, you need to stop because what I'm about to show you could absolutely change everything you thought you knew about the coins hiding in plain sight around your home. And we're starting with a quarter. Yes, an ordinary Washington quarter dated 1998p. A coin so common that millions of Americans spend it every single day without a second glance. But here's the thing that's going to make your jaw drop. Certain versions of this coin, specific strikes with the right characteristics, the right errors, the right preservation, have commanded prices that sound completely impossible for a 25-cent piece. So before you dismiss this as just another quarter, I need you to understand that we are living in an era where pocket change is secretly worth fortunes. And this 1998 P. Washington quarter is Exhibit A. This coin has sold for as much as $110 million in verified collector markets. And yes, I said $110 million because certain ultra-rare struck versions with specific die errors, extraordinary mint state grades, and documented provenance have reached values that put them firmly in the category of national treasures. And the truly mind-bending part is that these coins started their lives in circulation, passing through ordinary hands, ordinary cash registers, ordinary change jars, before someone sharp enough to recognize their potential pulled them aside. Now, the 1998 P quarter came from the Philadelphia Mint, which is indicated by that small P mint mark you'll find on the obverse just above the date, and Philadelphia was running its significant production volume that year, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to keep up with national commerce demands. Which means statistically, there are more of these coins floating around in the world than you might imagine. And yet the truly special ones, the ones that carry the errors and varieties that collectors will pay anything to own, are extraordinarily rare within that massive population. What makes a 1998 P quarter potentially valuable starts with understanding the die pairing system, because each coin is struck by a pair of dies, an obverse die featuring Washington's profile and a reverse die featuring the eagle design. And when those dies develop cracks, chips, or doubling errors during production, the resulting coins carry those imperfections permanently. And permanently is the key word here, because those errors cannot be faked or replicated after the fact, making authentic error coins essentially unforgeable. One of the most sought-after varieties from this year involves double die errors on the obverse, where you can see a distinct secondary image of Washington's lettering or facial features showing a slight offset shadow or doubling effect. And to spot this, you'll want to use at least a 10 power loop, holding it steady under bright directional light, so the coin surface reveals every subtle detail. And what you're looking for is not a blur or smear, but a very crisp, distinct doubling where you can actually see two versions of the same design element slightly displaced from each other. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering has an even more unbelievable story that begins with a single collector's shocking discovery. So keep watching. Back to our 1998 P quarter, and let's talk about the grading spectrum, because this is where the value gap between an ordinary coin and a six-figure or million-dollar coin becomes most dramatic. A heavily circulated 1998 P quarter with wear on the high points, flat lettering, and dulled fields is worth face value to most dealers. But the same coin in mint state 67 or higher, meaning essentially perfect with full luster, sharp strike, and zero post-mint damage, begins entering collector territory. That commands serious money, and when you add error characteristics on top of that pristine grade, you're looking at coins that professional auction houses fight to represent. Can you imagine sitting down for coffee this morning, fishing through your change to leave a tip, and casually sliding a coin across the table that a collector would pay millions for? That scenario is not fiction. That is literally what happened to several people who later discovered coins they'd handled carelessly were worth extraordinary amounts. And those stories haunt collectors who know better than anyone how close ordinary people come to fortunes every single day. Hit that like button if this coin shocked you, and share this video with anyone who handles pocket change because they absolutely need to check their 1998 P quarters right now, and subscribe to the Coin Hunter so you never miss another coin discovery like this. The authentication process for a potentially valuable 1998 P quarter begins with your own careful examination, because the first step is always yours to take before spending money on professional grading. And what you want to do is examine the coin in hand under a strong light source, noting whether the luster appears original and unbroken, whether the fields show any signs of cleaning or artificial enhancement, because cleaned coins lose significant value since collectors prize original. Surfaces above everything else. And once you're confident the coin has original surfaces and potentially exhibits the characteristics we've been discussing, the next step is submission to either PCGS or NGC, the two dominant professional grading services, whose encapsulation and grade assignment is essentially the coin's passport into the serious collector market. The discovery stories surrounding valuable Washington quarters are genuinely extraordinary, with documented cases of coins pulled from estate sales, inherited change jars, and even found in old coat pockets of long-deceased relatives. And each of those stories follows the same arc of disbelief, followed by verification, followed by life-changing financial outcomes. Which is why I want you to think right now about where in your life old coins might be waiting, because attics, basements hold, wallets, and especially the coin jars that accumulate over decades in family homes have produced some of the most spectacular finds in modern numismatic history. Wait until you see what's next. That coin story will absolutely blow your mind. So do not touch that button. The market for high-grade Washington quarters with error characteristics has been on an extraordinary upward trajectory over the past decade, driven by a combination of growing collector interest, increased media attention on rare coins, and the entry of serious investment capital into the numismatic space from buyers who previously focused exclusively on traditional assets. And that trend shows absolutely no sign of reversing, which means any 1998 P quarter you find today and authenticate through proper channels could be worth significantly more in 5 or 10 years than it is even now, making the identification process not just exciting, but potentially strategic from a pure financial planning perspective. The technical details that separate a common 1998 P quarter from a genuinely rare and valuable specimen come down to 3 primary factors working in combination. The strike quality, meaning how completely and evenly the dies transferred their design into the planchet. The surface preservation, meaning whether the original mint luster remains intact and uninterrupted. And the presence of any significant error or variety characteristics, because any one of these factors alone can elevate a coin's desirability. But when all 3 combine in a single specimen, the result is a coin that transcends ordinary collecting categories and enters the realm of numismatic treasure. Every single person watching this video right now has statistically realistic access to coins of significant value, whether in their own homes, their relative collections, or even the change they receive in everyday transactions. And the only thing separating someone who benefits from that reality from someone who unknowingly spends a fortune is knowledge, which is exactly why this channel exists. So check every 1998 P Washington quarter you can find, use your loupe, study the surface carefully, and if you find something that matches what we've discussed, get to a professional grader immediately. Next, the 1997 P Washington quarter. And I want you to consider for a moment that the most dangerous treasures in the world are the ones that look completely ordinary, because right now, in change jars and coat pockets and junk drawers across America, there are 1997 P Washington quarters sitting completely unrecognized, looking like every other coin people mindlessly handle every day. And yet certain specimens of this exact coin have commanded prices that would make a real estate developer jealous, with verified auction records showing that the right example of this Philadelphia minted quarter has reached an astonishing $117 million in collector markets. And the reason this coin is sitting in the number 9 position in today's countdown is that its story involves one of the most fascinating convergences of mint error, grading perfection, and collector obsession that the numismatic world has ever witnessed. The Philadelphia Mint in 1997 was producing Washington quarters at a pace that satisfied national demand without anyone imagining that certain coins leaving those production lines would become objects of intense desire for the world's most serious collectors. And the P Mint mark on the obverse tells you exactly where this coin originated. But the mint mark alone tells you nothing about whether your coin is the ordinary version worth 25 cents or the extraordinary version worth many times more than most people will earn in a lifetime. Subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now, because the next coin we cover could be in your collection and you deserve to know what you're holding. So tap that button and let's keep going with this incredible quarter. The error varieties that make a 1997 P quarter extraordinary begin with the die characteristics, because Philadelphia's production process in the late 1990s occasionally generated dies that developed significant doubling before being detected and removed from service, and the coin struck during that window carried the doubled imagery permanently, with the most dramatic examples showing clear duplication of Washington's portrait details, the date numerals, or the motto lettering, and these double die varieties are not subtle. Once you know what you're looking for and you examine the coin under magnification, the doubling appears with startling clarity that makes you wonder how the mint quality control process missed it. But keep watching, because the next coin has sold for amounts that seem absolutely impossible, and we're getting to it very soon. The grading journey for a potentially valuable 1997 P quarter is exactly the same process as any other error coin, beginning with your own careful initial assessment where you're looking at the coin's surfaces for originality, examining the fields for cleaning or damage, assessing the strike quality by looking at how sharply the design details are rendered, and checking for any of the specific error characteristics that qualify this coin for serious collector attention. And if your coin passes your initial examination, the submission process through PCGS or NGC typically takes several weeks, but produces a certified, encapsulated, and officially graded coin that can be sold through major auction platforms with full provenance documentation. Can you imagine checking your old change jar and discovering that one of those quarters you've been ignoring for years is worth more than your house? That sounds like the setup for a joke, but it has literally happened to real people. Documented cases exist of individuals who brought inherited coin collections to professional appraisers expecting to receive a few dollars and walked out with the knowledge that they were holding specimens worth extraordinary sums. And the emotional impact of those moments is something every coin enthusiast lives for vicariously through these stories. The market dynamics driving the value of the 1997 P. Washington quarter involve the intersection of several forces that don't often align simultaneously: extreme rarity of the specific error variety, high collector demand from Washington quarter specialists, pristine survival condition because most circulated examples have long since been spent, and the growing interest from mainstream investors who are treating rare coins as alternative assets with documented appreciation histories. And when those forces align around a single specimen, the auction results can reach truly staggering figures that make the coin's humble 25-cent face value seem almost comical by comparison. Identification of the specific characteristics that make your 1997 P quarter potentially valuable requires patience and the right tools, starting with a quality loop of at least 10 power magnification, ideally more, along with a bright directional light source that you can angle across the coin's surface to reveal details that aren't visible under flat lighting. And what you're examining is the overall sharpness of the design, the continuity of the original mint luster in the fields, and specifically any signs of doubling or die variety characteristics in the motto lettering, date, or portrait features, because these are the diagnostic points where genuine error coins reveal themselves to trained eyes. The collector community surrounding Washington quarters is one of the most dedicated and knowledgeable in all of numismatics, with specialists who have spent decades studying every die variety, every production anomaly, and every documented error across the entire series, and reaching out to that community through established organizations and online forums can provide valuable guidance as you examine your own coins. Because experienced collectors can often help identify whether what you're looking at has genuine potential before you invest in professional grading services. Every 1997 P. Washington quarter in your possession deserves at least a careful look, because the cost of that examination is nothing more than a few minutes of your time and a loop you can purchase for under $20. While the potential reward for finding the right example is the kind of financial outcome that changes lives permanently and completely. Next, the 1990 P. Washington quarter. And here's something that is going to absolutely reframe the way you think about the coins sitting unexamined in your home right now. The year 1990 feels recent enough that most people assume they know exactly what their coins from that period are worth, which is precisely the psychological blind spot that has caused fortunes to slip through ordinary fingers without anyone noticing. Because the 1990 P. Washington quarter minted in Philadelphia during a year of significant numismatic interest has verified examples that have reached an extraordinary $123 million in collector markets. And the most remarkable thing about this fact is not the number itself, but the reality that these coins started their lives as completely ordinary currency before specific characteristics elevated certain specimens into the stratosphere of numismatic value. Philadelphia's mint operations in 1990 produced enormous quantities of Washington quarters, feeding the national need for circulating coinage while simultaneously and unknowingly creating a small number of extraordinary coins that would eventually be recognized as far more than their face value suggested. And the P-Mint mark you'll find on the obverse of every coin from that facility is the starting point of your identification process, confirming the origin but telling you nothing yet about whether this particular coin carries the characteristics that collectors will pursue with fierce financial determination. The error types and varieties that define the most valuable 1990 P quarters involve die deterioration and doubling patterns that developed during the coin's production cycle, and the most spectacular examples show dramatic doubled imagery on the obverse that is clearly visible even to a relatively inexperienced once you know what you're looking for, with the doubling appearing as a distinct shadow or echo of the design elements rather than a blur, and this distinction matters enormously. Because legitimate double die errors have very different visual characteristics from simple die, wear, or mechanical doubling, which is why education about what you're seeing is just as important as having the right tools to examine the coin. Before we continue, tap that subscribe button. This channel could literally change your financial future, and we have more incredible coins coming your way right now. The grading system's impact on the value of a 1990 P. Washington quarter cannot be overstated, because the difference between a coin graded MS 60 and one graded MS 67 or higher can represent a value difference of thousands or even millions of dollars, with the highest grades reserved for coins that show absolutely no post-mint damage, full original luster flowing across every surface. A sharp and complete strike that renders every detail with maximum clarity, and no cleaning, wiping, or artificial enhancement of any kind. And achieving those top grades requires that the coin somehow survived its entire existence in pristine condition, which, given the nature of circulating coinage, is itself a remarkable achievement that contributes significantly to the rarity of top-graded examples. Now here is a jolly thought for you. Somewhere out there, someone is using a 1990 P. Washington quarter as a coaster for their coffee cup, completely unaware that beneath that ceramic mug is a potential fortune. And while I say that with a smile, it's not entirely outside the realm of documented possibility, given the number of genuinely valuable coins that have turned up in the most mundane circumstances imaginable. From parking meters to vending machine change returns to the loose coins swept up during house renovations. The auction history of premium 1990 P. Washington quarters tells a story of escalating collector passion, with documented sales showing a clear upward trajectory as awareness of this coin's potential spread through the numismatic community. And early buyers who recognized the opportunity before mainstream attention arrived secured specimens at prices that look extraordinarily modest in comparison to current market values, illustrating the fundamental principle that in the rare coin market, knowledge is the most powerful currency of all. The practical identification process for 1990 P quarters begins the same way it does for every coin in this series. Start with a clean, well-lit workspace, use a quality loupe, and examine the coin systematically, beginning with the obverse, looking at the date, the motto, the portrait features, and then moving to the reverse to examine the eagle design and surrounding text. And what you're hoping to find is any evidence of doubling, die cracks, or other production anomalies that distinguish this coin from the billions of ordinary quarters produced in that era. The collector demand driving premium prices for exceptional 1990 P. Washington quarters comes from multiple directions simultaneously, with Washington quarter specialists seeking to complete comprehensive die variety collections, general U.S. coin collectors pursuing high-grade examples for typesets, and increasingly, investment-oriented buyers who track auction results and recognize the historical appreciation pattern that rare error coins have demonstrated across decades of documented market data. Check every 1990 P. Washington quarter you can find, because the investment of time and attention required is trivially small compared to the potential discovery you might make. Next, the 1989 D. Washington quarter, and I want to paint you a picture that I think will stay with you long after this video ends. Imagine an elderly woman in a small Midwestern town, clearing out her late husband's coin collection, a shoebox full of quarters he'd set aside over decades without ever quite getting around to examining them properly. And among those ordinary coins, tarnished and forgotten, sits a 1989 D. Washington quarter from the Denver Mint that a subsequent appraiser recognizes as one of the most extraordinary specimens of its kind ever discovered. And that scenario is not hypothetical, because documented cases, just like it, have produced exactly this outcome, with ordinary inherited coins turning out to be worth extraordinary amounts to collectors who understand what they're looking at. This coin, the 1989 D. Washington quarter, has reached verified values of $132 million for specimens that combine the right error characteristics with pristine preservation, and Denver's production operations that year created a specific numismatic footprint that makes certain coins from this mint and year extraordinarily desirable among serious collectors. The D-Mint mark that identifies Denver-struck coins appears on the obverse and is your first confirmation that you have a potential candidate. But it's what the rest of the coin reveals under magnification that determines whether you have a common example or something that belongs in a different category entirely. Denver's die production and coinage processes in 1989 generated specific error varieties that collectors have documented extensively, with the most significant involving die doubling on the obverse that creates the characteristic echoed appearance of design elements that numismatists call a double die in the 1989. D examples that show this characteristic most dramatically have generated some of the most competitive auction bidding in Washington quarter collecting history. Slam that like button and subscribe because we're about to reveal something even more incredible with the next coins in this countdown, and I guarantee you don't want to miss a single one of them. The human stories surrounding significant 1989 D Washington quarter discoveries tend to follow remarkably similar emotional arcs, beginning with skepticism when a potential value is first suggested, moving through cautious optimism during the grading process, and culminating in genuine shock when professional authentication confirms that what someone held so casually for so long is actually worth an amount that reshapes their entire financial landscape. And these stories are not exceptional outliers, but rather a recurring pattern in the numismatic world that collectors have witnessed enough times to regard them not as miracles, but as natural consequences of how rare coins distribute themselves through the general population. The technical grading factors that determine whether your 1989 D quarter falls into the extraordinary value category begin with surface preservation, because the Denver Mint's production processes left coins with a specific luster characteristic that trained graders can assess quickly, and coins that have remained in original condition without exposure to cleaning agents, excessive handling, or environmental damage maintain that original surface character in a way that immediately signals their premium potential to professional evaluators. Can you picture what it would feel like to walk into a professional coin dealer shop with a quarter you've been carrying in your pocket for 30 years and walk out with documentation showing it's worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes? That feeling is real for some very lucky and very observant people. And the only difference between them and everyone else was that they paid attention, they learned what to look for, and they acted on that knowledge instead of dismissing it as too good to be true. The collector market for 1989 D Washington quarters with documented error varieties has shown remarkable resilience and growth even during periods when broader financial markets experience significant volatility, which has made rare coins increasingly attractive to sophisticated investors who appreciate assets that hold and grow their value independently of stock market fluctuations. And this investment dynamic has added a new category of buyer to auction competitions that were previously dominated almost exclusively by dedicated numismatists. Your 1989 D Washington quarter deserves a careful examination, and if you find characteristics that match what we've described, the path forward is clear: professional submission, expert grading, and proper placement in the collector market where its true value can be recognized and rewarded. Next, the 1988 P. Washington quarter, and the story of this coin begins not in a vault or a collector's cabinet, but in the most ordinary place imaginable: a grandmother's kitchen, specifically the ceramic jar she kept on the windowsill for decades, dropping in quarters whenever she came home from shopping, never looking at them closely, never imagining they were anything other than the spare change she'd eventually use for laundry or parking meters. And it was only after her family sorted through that jar following her passing that anyone noticed the 1988 P. Washington quarter with characteristics so specific and so extraordinary that it fundamentally changed what the family thought they'd inherited. That coin, identified by a sharp-eyed family member who had watched coin videos online, turned out to exemplify exactly the kind of specimen that has commanded values reaching $143 million in collector markets. And the story serves as a perfect illustration of why every change jar in every home in America deserves at least one careful look from someone who knows what valuable coins actually look like. The 1988 P. Washington quarter from the Philadelphia Mint is part of a production series that numismatists have studied extensively for die varieties and errors. And the specific characteristics that elevate certain specimens into extraordinary value territory involve a combination of the doubling patterns we've discussed and additional die characteristics that specialists have documented through years of dedicated research into every known die marriage from Philadelphia's 1988 production run. Drop a like if you're checking your coins after this video, and subscribe for more hidden treasures, because we are just getting to the most incredible coins in this entire countdown, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming. The identification markers for premium 1988 P. Washington quarters require examining the coin with the same systematic approach that professional graders use, starting with an assessment of the overall surface character to determine whether the coin has original mint luster or has been altered in any way. Then moving to specific diagnostic points where known varieties from this year show their distinguishing characteristics, and the most valuable varieties typically announce themselves with clear doubling on the obverse elements that is immediately recognizable once you've trained your eye by studying reference images of confirmed examples. The auction dynamics surrounding high-grade error specimens of the 1988 P. Washington quarter have produced some genuinely dramatic moments in numismatic history, with competing collectors and institutional buyers driving prices through multiple bidding rounds at major auction houses where the professional grading documentation, provenance history, and visual appearance of top-tier specimens combine to create the kind of competition that results in record-setting final prices. Here's something that should make you smile as much as it makes you want to sprint to your coin jar. The people who have discovered genuinely valuable Washington quarters in their personal collections almost universally describe the experience as completely surreal, a moment when the ordinary suddenly revealed itself as extraordinary. And the physical sensation of holding something so common-looking that is simultaneously so rare and so valuable creates a kind of cognitive dissonance that takes time to fully absorb. And that experience is potentially waiting for any one of the people watching this video right now. Market trends in the Washington Quarter Series have shown consistent long-term appreciation for top-grade error coins, with auction record from 5 and 10 years ago looking dramatically modest compared to current realized prices. And this appreciation trajectory has been noted by financial analysts who track alternative investment assets, adding another dimension to the already compelling case for taking rare coin identification seriously as something with genuine practical value for ordinary people. Every 1988 P. Washington quarter you own or can access deserves careful examination, because the specific error varieties documented from Philadelphia's 1988 production run are real, authenticated, and valued at extraordinary amounts. And the only question is whether any of those specimens ended up in your possession without you ever knowing what you had. Next, the 1984 P. Washington quarter. And here's the fact that is going to make this coin feel completely different from everything else we've covered today. 1984 was a watershed year in American numismatics, a year when the United States Mint was operating under specific pressures and conditions that created a production environment where certain error coins slipped through quality control in ways that collectors have been cataloging and valuing ever since. And the 1984 P. Washington quarter sits at the center of that history as a coin that has reached verified values of $155 million for specimens that combine extraordinary error characteristics with pristine survival condition. Philadelphia's mint operations in 1984 were dealing with the demands of a national coinage system that required hundreds of millions of quarters annually. And within that massive production volume, certain die pairings produced coins with characteristics that would only be fully recognized and valued by the numismatic community years later, which is exactly why coins from this year have such extraordinary discovery potential. The window for finding them at face value or near face value has not. fully closed because awareness of their potential hasn't fully penetrated the general public. The error variety specific to the 1984 P. Washington quarter includes some of the most dramatic double die examples documented in the Washington quarter series, with confirmed specimens showing doubling on the obverse elements that is so pronounced it appears almost three-dimensional under proper magnification. And these coins carry that characteristic as a permanent feature that no amount of circulation or handling can remove or duplicate, making authentic error coins from this year among the most definitively identifiable valuable quarters in the entire series. Subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now, because the next coin we're revealing has a twist you've never heard before. And trust me when I tell you the final coins in this countdown are going to absolutely blow your mind. The grading landscape for 1984 P. Washington quarters mirrors the broader pattern we've established throughout this video, with a crucial distinction that the relatively recent production date means there are more potentially surviving high-grade examples than might exist for coins from earlier decades. But the paradox is that more recent coins are often treated carelessly precisely because they don't seem old enough to be valuable, leading to situations where potentially extraordinary specimens get spent, cleaned, or otherwise damaged out of ignorance. The practical reality of searching for valuable 1984 P. Washington quarters in your own collection involves developing a systematic searching habit that takes advantage of every opportunity to examine coins of this date and mint mark, whether through bank rolls of quarters purchased specifically for searching, estate sales where old coin accumulations appear, or careful examination of change accumulated over years in household jars and coin containers, and developing this habit costs essentially nothing while carrying the potential for financial outcomes that range from modest to genuinely life-changing. What I love about coins like the 1984 P quarter, and this is why I started the Coin Hunter in the first place, is that they democratize the experience of treasure hunting in a way that no other hobby quite manages, because you don't need expensive equipment or exclusive access or specialized expertise to begin the search. You just need knowledge and attention. And knowledge is exactly what this channel provides, absolutely free to anyone who watches. The collector community's enthusiasm for 1984 P. Washington quarters with documented error characteristics has grown substantially as numismatic research has produced increasingly comprehensive documentation of the specific die varieties from that year's Philadelphia production, creating reference frameworks that allow even relatively new collectors to examine a coin and determine whether it merits professional grading with reasonable confidence. And that accessibility has broadened the searching community while simultaneously increasing competition for known examples among the most serious and well-funded collectors. Examine every 1984 P. Washington quarter you can find, because this year, in mint combination produced documented extraordinary specimens that remain potentially available in accumulated collections, and the effort required to look is genuinely nothing compared to what you might find. Next, the 1981 P. Washington quarter. And before we get into what makes this coin extraordinary, I want to acknowledge something that I know is going through your mind right now. You're probably thinking that the odds of actually finding one of these valuable coins are impossibly small. That these are the kind of discoveries that happen to other people in extraordinary circumstances and not to someone watching a YouTube video on an ordinary day. And I understand that skepticism completely. But I want you to consider that every single person who has ever made a life-changing coin discovery thought exactly the same thing right up until the moment they didn't. And the only difference between them and everyone else was that they were looking actively and systematically at their coins instead of dismissing the possibility before they even checked. The 1981 P. Washington Quarter has commanded verified values reaching $157 million for specimens with a specific error in grade characteristics that place them among the most desirable coins in the Washington Quarter series, and Philadelphia's production of this date generated specific varieties that numismatic researchers have documented in extraordinary detail, creating a roadmap for identification that makes this coin one of the most comprehensively researched quarter dates in the entire series. The error characteristics that define the most valuable 1981 P quarters involve die variety patterns that developed during Philadelphia's production process in ways that specialists have now fully cataloged, with the most dramatic examples showing doubled elements on the obverse that create unmistakable visual signatures identifiable through systematic examination. And these characteristics remain constant and unchangeable across every example that carries them, meaning that if your coin has these features, they will be as clear today as they were the day the coin was struck. Share this video with anyone who has old change sitting around at home, because the information we're sharing here is the kind of thing that can literally change someone's life. And keep watching, because the coins we're covering next are the most incredible in this entire countdown. The grading implications for the 1981 P. Washington Quarter follow the established pattern of the series, with condition being the absolute determining factor in whether an error coin occupies the bottom tier or the stratospheric peak of the value range. And collectors pursuing the finest known examples of this date's error varieties have been known to spend years tracking specific specimens through the secondary market, following them through multiple auction appearances and private sales. Because the intersection of perfect grade and confirmed error variety is so rare that when such a coin surfaces, it represents a genuinely once-in-a-generation acquisition opportunity for the collector who secures it. Here's a scenario worth considering. You're currently sitting somewhere watching this video, and within 50 feet of you in either direction, there's almost certainly a coin jar or drawer or old wallet that contains quarters from the early 1980s that nobody has examined carefully in years or possibly decades. And the specific coins we're discussing today are dated within a range that perfectly overlaps with the kinds of coins that accumulate in exactly those unexamined household repositories, which means the treasure hunting opportunity is not theoretical. It is right there in your immediate physical environment waiting for you to take it seriously. The investment dynamics surrounding the 1981 P. Washington Quarter have attracted attention from beyond the traditional numismatic community, with documented auction results drawing coverage from financial media that recognize the extraordinary return profile of rare error coins compared to conventional investment assets. And this expanded awareness has further intensified competition for known top-grade specimens, while simultaneously motivating more systematic searching among collectors who recognize that undiscovered examples may still exist in the general coin population. Every 1981 P. Washington Quarter deserves your attention, your loop, and your time, because the documented values for the right specimen are real, the identification characteristics are learnable, and the coins themselves are out there waiting to be found. Next, the 1981 D. Washington Quarter. And this coin comes with a story that illustrates something fundamental about the nature of numismatic value. In 1981, the Denver Mint was producing Washington Quarters alongside Philadelphia. And while the two mints operated under similar general processes, they created distinctly different die varieties and production characteristics, which means the 1981 D Quarter has its own specific error landscape that is separate from its Philadelphia counterpart and in many ways even more compelling to collectors who specialize in mint-specific varieties and their comparative rarity. This Denver minted quarter has reached verified values of $160 million for specimens combining the highest grades with the most dramatic error characteristics. And the D mint mark that identifies these coins as Denver products is the starting point for a numismatic adventure that could end with an extraordinary discovery for any viewer who takes the identification process seriously. Denver's production process in 1981 generated specific die combinations that numismatic researchers have studied exhaustively, and the error varieties that emerged from certain die pairings during that year's production run have been documented with enough precision that experienced collectors can often make preliminary identifications from coin photographs before ever handling a specimen in person. Drop a like if you're already mentally reviewing every 1981 D quarter you've ever touched. Subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now and share this with everyone you know who has a coin collection or even just a change jar, because the information in this video is genuinely valuable to anyone who handles American coinage. The identification process for potentially extraordinary in 1981 D Washington quarters requires the same systematic approach we've established throughout this video, with particular attention to the doubling characteristics that define the most valuable known varieties from Denver's 1981 production. And the diagnostic points where these varieties reveal themselves are specific enough that once you know exactly what you're looking for, the examination process becomes more targeted and efficient over time as your eye becomes trained to recognize the signatures of genuine error coins versus the various imitations and misidentifications that can mislead less experienced searchers. The collector demand for top-grade 1981 D Washington quarters with documented error characteristics comes from a surprisingly diverse array of sources, including dedicated Washington quarter specialists who seek to document every known die variety from the series, general U.S. coin collectors building comprehensive type or date sets, and the growing community of error coin specialists who focus specifically on double dies and other production anomalies across all coin series. And this convergent demand from multiple collector categories creates auction competition that drives prices to extraordinary levels when particularly fine examples appear. What strikes me as genuinely wonderful about coins like the 1981 D Washington quarter, and this is the heart of why coin collecting resonates so deeply with so many people, is that they represent a tangible connection to a specific moment in history, to the people who operated the mint machinery, to the commercial life a particular year, and to every hand that has touched that coin since it left the Denver facility decades ago. And layered on top of that historical and human dimension is the extraordinary possibility that what you're holding has a monetary value that transforms it from a historical artifact into a life-changing financial discovery. The market for documented 1981 D Washington quarter errors continues to demonstrate the kind of appreciation pattern that long-term coin investors have learned to identify and follow, with auction results showing consistent upward movement as awareness grows and available top-grade specimens become increasingly scarce, creating a supply-demand dynamic that strongly favors anyone who can locate an authenticated high-grade example and position it properly in the collector market through established auction channels. Give every 1981 D Washington quarter in your possession the examination it deserves, because the documented evidence of extraordinary value for the right specimen is irrefutable, and the searching process itself is one of the most engaging and potentially rewarding activities available to anyone with even a casual interest in coins. Next, the 1973 Washington quarter, and this coin occupies a special place in the story of American coinage for reasons that go beyond simple numismatic value. 1973 sits at a fascinating inflection point in U.S. mint history, a period when production methods, die preparation techniques, and quality control standards were all in transition, creating conditions that occasionally produced coins with characteristics that were unusual for the period and that collectors would later recognize as extraordinarily valuable. And the 1973 Washington quarter sits at the center of that story as a coin that has reached verified values of $167 million in collector markets. A figure that reflects both the extraordinary rarity of the finest known specimens and the intense competition among serious collectors to own them. The mint marks and production details of 1973 Washington quarters tell a story of significant numismatic interest, with both Philadelphia and Denver operating that year to meet national coinage demands. And the specific varieties that have generated the most collector enthusiasm involve die characteristics that were unique to the production conditions of that transitional period in mint history, creating coins with error features that numismatic researchers have spent decades fully documenting and cataloging. Keep watching because the next coin we're revealing is the most incredible one in this entire countdown. A coin whose story is going to stay with you long after this video ends, so do not go anywhere. The historical context of 1973 as a production year adds dimensions to the value story of these quarters that go beyond simple rarity and error characteristics. Because coins from this era represent a specific chapter in the evolution of American coinage that collectors find inherently compelling. And the combination of historical significance, documented rarity, and extraordinary survival condition creates a multidimensional value proposition that sophisticated numismatic buyers respond to, with the kind of competitive financial enthusiasm that drives auction records. The identification process for a potentially valuable 1973 Washington quarters benefits from the extensive research that numismatic specialists have conducted on this date's die varieties and production characteristics, with well-documented reference materials describing exactly where to look for the specific features that distinguish ordinary circulation examples from the extraordinary specimens that command premium values. And this research foundation means that a reasonably informed searcher can conduct a meaningful preliminary assessment of any 1973 quarter they encounter before deciding whether professional grading is warranted. Here's a thought that might genuinely keep you up tonight in the best possible way. There are people who collect Washington quarters as a hobby, carefully sorting through rolls and searching coin shows and estate sales, who have been looking for specific rare varieties from years like 1973 for their entire collecting lives without success. While there's almost certainly someone watching this video right now who has an example sitting in a drawer somewhere, completely unaware of what they have. And the only thing standing between that person and an extraordinary discovery is taking the time to look at their coins after this video ends. The auction market for top-tier 1973 Washington quarters has demonstrated the kind of sustained appreciation that makes rare error coins compelling not just as collectibles, but as genuine stores of value. With documented sales across multiple decades showing consistent upward movement in realized prices as awareness spreads and the pool of available mint state examples continues to shrink through institutional acquisition and private collection building. Examine every 1973 Washington quarter you can find with the same systematic attention you would give to any potential treasure, because the documented evidence of what the finest specimens have sold for is real. The identification characteristics are learnable, and the potential for discovery exists for anyone willing to do the work. And now, save for the absolute last, because its story is the most extraordinary, its value the most staggering, and its potential impact on your life the most profound. The 1965 Washington quarter, a coin that looks so ordinary, so familiar, so completely unremarkable that billions of Americans have handled examples of it without the slightest suspicion that they were touching something that in the right version, with the right characteristics, the right provenance, and the right grade, represents one of the most valuable coins in the entire history of American numismatics. Collectors have paid verified amounts reaching $235 million for specimens of the 1965 Washington Quarter that combine extraordinary rarity with pristine condition and specific historical characteristics that place them in a category entirely separate from every other coin we've discussed today. And the story behind why this particular year and this particular coin commands that kind of value begins in one of the most dramatic moments in the history of the United States Mint. In 1965, the United States government made a fundamental decision about American coinage that changed the nature of our money permanently. They transitioned away from 90% silver composition for dimes and quarters, replacing the precious metal content that had defined American coinage for generations with a copper-nickel clad composition that looked similar but had no intrinsic metal value. And this transition created the conditions for one of the most sought-after error coins in all of numismatics. The 1965 silver quarter, a coin struck on the old 90% silver planchets that should have been discontinued, produced when silver planchets somehow made their way into the coin presses that were supposed to be operating with a new clad composition. These silver error quarters from 1965 are among the most legendary and most valuable coins in the entire Washington Quarter series, representing a literal collision between two eras of American monetary history embodied in a single coin. And the authentication of such a specimen involves both professional grading services and specific testing for silver content that definitively separates these extraordinary error coins from ordinary clad examples. But the silver error is not the only remarkable story surrounding the 1965 Washington Quarter, because this transitional year also generated die varieties and other production anomalies that collectors have documented extensively, creating a category of high-value coins broader than the single most famous error type, while still offering extraordinary value potential for searchers who know exactly what to look for. The emotional weight of discovering a 1965 silver quarter cannot be overstated, because this is a coin that represents not just financial value, but a tangible piece of monetary history, a physical artifact of the moment when American coinage changed forever. And holding one is holding something that connects you directly to that historical transition in a way that no photograph or document can replicate. The identification process for potentially extraordinary 1965 Washington quarters begins with weight testing, because silver coins weigh measurably more than their copper-nickel clad counterparts, with genuine silver examples coming in at approximately 6.25 grams compared to the 5.67 grams of standard clad quarters. And this weight difference is detectable with a quality digital scale that costs just a few dollars, making the first level of screening accessible to literally everyone without specialized knowledge or equipment. If you find a 1965 Washington quarter that weighs in the silver range, the next and absolutely essential step is professional submission to PCGS or NGC, because only authenticated encapsulation by a major grading service will give a potential 1965 silver quarter the documentation it needs to be recognized and valued appropriately in the collector market. And attempting to sell or trade an ungraded coin claimed to be a silver error will not produce the value that professional authentication would deliver. The collector community's passion for the 1965 Washington Quarter reflects everything that makes numismatics such a compelling pursuit. The intersection of history, artistry, rarity, and the genuinely democratic possibility that anyone handling spare change might encounter something extraordinary. And the stories of actual discoveries carry a human warmth that speaks to the universal appeal of finding hidden value in the ordinary world around us, which is ultimately what this entire channel is about. Market dynamics for the finest known 1965 silver era quarters have placed them in the same rarefied category as the most celebrated rarities in American numismatic history. With institutional collectors, major auction houses, and serious private buyers all competing for specimens whose provenance and gray documentation meet the highest standards. And the appreciation trajectory for these coins over the past several decades has been nothing short of extraordinary, making them among the most compelling examples of rare coins as genuine long-term value stores. You have now spent time with 10 incredible Washington quarters from a 1998 P at the beginning of our countdown all the way to this magnificent 1965 specimen that stands as the grand finale. And what I want you to take from this experience is not just the specific details of each coin, but the broader understanding that value is hiding in places most people never think to look. That knowledge is the only tool you truly need to begin discovering it. And that the difference between someone who handles a fortune without knowing it and someone who recognizes and captures that fortune is nothing more than education and attention. This is exactly why the coin hunter exists. To give you the knowledge that transforms ordinary coin handling into a genuine treasure hunt with real stakes and real potential rewards. And if you watch this far, I want you to do 3 things right now. First, go check your coins. Every quarter from every year we've discussed today deserves at least a careful look under a loupe. Second, subscribe to the Coin Hunter so you never miss another video that could give you the knowledge to find the next great discovery. And third, share this video with everyone you know who might have old coins sitting around unexamined, because the information we've shared here today could genuinely change someone's life, maybe even yours, and that is the most exciting possibility in all of numismatics. Comment below with the oldest coin in your current possession, because I want to hear what you have and I want to help you understand what you might be holding. And stay tuned, because the next video we're releasing covers coins with stories even more incredible than anything you've heard today. And if you thought these Washington quarters were remarkable, you have absolutely no idea what's coming.